Creatures of creativity. From the Front Office Wealth Strategy Studio in Edwardsville, Illinois, welcome to the Creatures of Creativity podcast. The podcast focused on the people and the process of creating. Episode number 1. Check out our pilot if you haven't. I am David Leip. As always, we are presented by Whole Street Productions, creating powerful stories through film. Check them out at wholestreetproductions.com. Always good to see you, principal partner Ryan Tollison and principal partner at Whole Street Productions, Michael Segura. Good to see you guys.
Likewise.
Well, it's good
Happy
to be
New
here.
Year.
Happy New Year. Recorded on January 2nd, 2025.
That's right.
I almost said 24, but
I know I'm going to be writing things out for a while with 25.
get closer there.
Is
Come
this
on.
cut? Okay, there we go.
There you go.
I'm an amateur. I've never done this before.
I know. Sorry about that. All right, and you, Mr. Segura, good Christmas. You went out of town.
Yeah, it was a little afterwards, but it's always great to be able to get on the road, see the fam, and see both sides of the family, hang out with everyone, and also be able to just chill at home. Like that's probably my favorite part of the holidays, if you get to do that.
Tonight, we are joined in our first episode by a legend in the space of creativity, according to our mutual friend, Mike Kathreiner. And shout out to Mike for suggesting you. And I thought, brilliant.
I had no idea Mike liked me. That's great.
He does. Everybody I know everybody who knows you likes you. I would describe Jim as a writer, entrepreneur, publisher, marketing, branding guru, and rock and roll drummer. Did I leave anything out?
No. I think you got it all.
Dad
too.
Forgot that one.
Mm-hmm.
Foodie.
As you can tell.
And like me, a former Granite City high school tennis player.
That's right.
Said I was going to talk about that later, but all right, let's talk about what you're doing right now. Today you are a CMO at Clementine's Ice Cream, 8 stores. Mm-hmm. Is that how you think you spend most of your professional time these days?
Right now, yes. And I want to get a few things out about that. I do get to test ice cream almost every day. It's the worst job ever.
Sounds awful.
Our R&D chef or our owner comes out with ice cream and it's like, okay, try this one. We had, in some earlier discussions, we're talking about naming ice cream. Yes, me and my marketing team get to name the ice cream.
And tell people what makes
the worst job
Clementine. First of all, it's delicious designer ice cream, like the best ice cream you'll ever eat.
Yes.
Number one, but number two, what makes it even a different level is you can get it with booze.
That's right.
Which is like, it's like if I don't even want to mention another ice cream brand because it's nothing else is even close. But like whoever came up with that, was that your idea?
No.
To put the booze in the ice cream?
That was Tamara, the owner. She came to us at the very beginning, 10 years ago when I owned Box and Clever, walked into our conference room and said, I'm making ice cream. She brought samples. I tasted it, and I was just GTFO. The first one was gooey butter cake. She just made gooey butter cakes, chopped them up, put them in the ice cream. That's still our top seller. Everyone loves gooey butter cake.
So I had to laugh.
Al Roker's favorite ice cream of ours is gooey butter cake. So she came out of the gate with something ridiculous, and I've been working with her, since.
And how many years ago was that?
10 years ago, and our 10-year anniversary is in like 2 months. Okay. So 8 stores getting ready to go to other markets, getting ready to get into grocery. Right now is a big time for expansion, but the main thing is we have these, like you said, boozy ice cream. Not super high alcohol content. You'd have to eat quite a bit of ice cream to.
Yeah, no, you don't eat it to get drunk, but it's like
delicious. Yeah, the maple bourbon pecan is unreal. We have vegan ice cream, which a lot of people like vegan, and I'm like, yeah, it's dairy free for people who don't want, who are lactose intolerant, who are celiac disease. You can still have ice cream. It's made with coconut milk. So and she found a way to make it uber creamy. Mark Maron's podcast, that's his favorite. He's vegan, so Mark Maron eats a lot of our vegan flavors, and then the regular ones are all our foodie stuff. Everything from manchego cheese to tahini and all these rare exotic herbs and things you find. We scour the earth for good stuff. I mean, we had to reformulate an ice cream because the chocolate company from France we got this particular cocoa for one of our flavors quit shipping to the U.S. They're like, we're not going to ship there anymore, and we had to reformulate the whole ice cream. So We work hard for the whole planet to be involved in these delicious ice creams. So
Doing a good job of it.
oh, so good.
And we'll get back to Clementines later. And you're also a consultant for BAM, which is one of the partners here in the fiduciary network with wealth management.
Yeah, absolutely. Been working with them a number of years. Again, it shows how I try to teach both students of mine that I've had when I taught to friends of mine not to burn bridges. Bonnie, the owner of BAM, I grew up across the street from her family. You know what I mean? So I'm 56. We're friendly still. We're working together. I have a bunch of great friends there, and I get to work on a lot of very fun stuff for them as well. So,
Founder, proprietor of Harper's Bazaar, branding and design. That's your own personal gig.
Own design firm. Been doing that for since I sold Boxing Clever, so probably over 15, 16 years now.
Okay.
So, yeah. And I design local stuff, national stuff. I have a lot of, again, relationships. We have clients like the Blue Devils out in San Francisco, the marching band. We do all of their stuff. They do national competitions and stuff like that.
How did you get
local
them?
band? A friend from Zipatoni. So that is another Don't Burn Bridges. My friend Jimmy Verrett took over the Blue Devils as director and called and said, can you help us with this? And I was like, of course I can. So Kevin, who works with me at Harper's Bazaar, we started doing all their stuff. This is our second or third year working with them. So, again, don't burn bridges, kids. That's the thing. Be nice to everybody.
Start building your brand today. I tell the kids in my class that all the time. That kid next to you is going to be a bank president.
Yeah.
Or his dad's a bank president.
Already.
Or the kids you're playing against or everybody.
Yeah.
Fine print, smallpress.com. Tell us about that.
One of the books that's sitting in front of me is the work of Tom Huck. It's called The Devil's in the Details. This is our project during COVID. We met Tom Huck, who is a local artist who's done amazing printmaking for decades, and we thought it was a crime that he did not have a book about his work. His work's National Museum, the Met, Peacock Visual Arts in Scotland, where he just printed his last piece. He's all over the world. He's very famous. Worked with The Roots, Jimmy Fallon's band. He did the album cover for Analogy for them, toured Germany with Motorhead. This is a legend. We decided it was hard to find his work because it's rare in the wild. It's never displayed together except in very few.
Wait, he's touring with Motorhead. Doing what?
He toured with Motorhead when Lemmy was alive.
Right.
They asked him in St. Louis. They saw his work. He did the work for him there because he loves Motorhead. He's got like 9 Motorhead tattoos. They were like, we're going to Germany next week. Can you go with us? And he's like, I'll drop whatever I'm doing. And he went to Germany, and he said, take all of your premonitions about what you think Motorhead does when they're on the road, and it's worse. Everything you think they are doing when they're on the road, it doesn't even touch the surface of what fueled them to be Motorhead. And I tell everybody this, it's sad they're gone because this is one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time, and everyone should have seen them once. But if you've never had a jet engine in your face, then you have no idea what going to a Motorhead concert's like. It's unreal. So yeah.
Wow. I never saw Motorhead, but I did watch a documentary on Lemmy, so that makes me an expert.
There you go.
Okay.
And you know, they played one of their last St. Louis shows was Pops.
Oh my god!
Of course,
they
it was.
played
That's
Pops
great.
twice. They loved Pops, so they came and played there and destroyed that place. It was unbelievable.
I think we should have a podcast of bring us your best Pops stories. Pops
Oh,
is
yeah.
probably before your time.
No, not at all.
We've had our pops experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because I think we're at the age where you could assume and almost be right. You know, we could have missed out on a lot of things, but fortunately we got to catch the tail end of these eras that were kind of
nice.
coming to a close, and we were in the music scene and pretty nerdy about it too. So,
Played Mississippi Nights right before they tore it down.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that was,
Well,
that was the
Mississippi
cool
Nights
thing we
was-
got to
yeah.
do.
Was
but
my
that's
college
why
playground.
Again, that was the
every
very
night.
end. Yeah.
I was there every
Fishbone.
night for a while.
I
Yeah.
love that place.
Fishbone, Chili
Mhm.
Peppers, on
Yeah.
and on and on.
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I can really appreciate hearing about that, man. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Pops had a run there, and me and some of my bandmates were some old guys I play music with. Were talking about this. They had a run where they had phenomenal shows a lot, and you would go in there and there would be paper towels and toilet paper. Like, it was a real club where they had bathrooms that worked. Like, no other club that I was accustomed to had working water and bathrooms. So we would go there and be like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. Pops, right? When did they start this? But we saw the Cramps there. I saw Mastodon, saw some metal, saw some pop. It was just DJ stuff. It was very cool for a while. And when I think COVID kind of maybe put the kibosh on that place, so it was a bummer. I saw X, the band, legendary X band, Exene Cervenka and John Doe, originally from LA, but Exine's from St. Louis. They played Pops, and they played at 8. And I was like, this is the greatest concert I've ever been to in my life, because I was home by 10:30. Old man Harper got his punk rock show.
I feel that right now.
Yeah, it was so great.
I want to say one more thing about this book.
Yeah.
Written by, you said we, but you didn't mention the other half of that.
Yeah, written by my friend Greg Kessler.
Our
from
friend.
Edwardsville, our good friend
He
from
grew up,
high school.
He grew up on Binger.
Yeah.
Or was it Ivy? And
Ivy,
he was on Ivy, and I was on Cambridge.
Yep, absolutely.
So, like, forever.
Greg wrote this. My buddy Chris Ryan is my partner in this. Not only did Chris, like, besides fund this project and concept it, but he shot all the work in this book. And a cool sports story related to the work is all of the work in here was shot at Mary Ann Simmons' studio. Ted Simmons, Hall of Famer, Cardinals, his wife's studio. Ted and Mary Ann, this book would not have happened without them. They're his biggest supporters.
Ted Simmons loves Tom Huck.
They own all of his work.
Wow.
Ted Simmons.
Yeah, Ted Simmons. Ted is the nicest. Ted and Mary Ann are two of my favorite people. But Ted and Mary Ann, like, they've been buying I shouldn't say this, but they're like, we're Tom's ATM. If he needs to make another piece and he finds a book, we'll just buy it from him. They love his work. So, and Mary Ann had all the stuff we were missing in her studio, so we got to go there and shoot it. So, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
He spoke at our Little League banquet for Granite City when
how cool is that?
When I was in like 3rd grade, and he sat up there telling us. I remember he was smoking a dart, which was awesome.
Normal for that time,
because everybody smoked. This is like
throw in a heater.
This is 1975.
Yeah, I'm at the kids thing. I gotta have a heater.
And he's like, "Listen, stay in school." And we were like, okay. I thought it was amazing. Changed my life. And then his hair caught on fire the next year at spring training. Remember that?
Yes, I do. Now that I forgot all about that.
How did that
That's
happen?
hilarious.
I mean, you got
it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It's not. It's no Richard Pryor. I don't think there was anything nefarious like that.
Probably, whatever
sure.
light.
Spring training. You don't ask questions in the 70s.
Flicking it off and the wind's blowing it back in his face.
Right. Yeah. Well, he did have that super cool.
Yeah, the main.
Yeah, it was
too
like
much hairspray.
Yeah, the whole thing going on. All right.
That SOB still got great hair.
I saw a picture of him recently.
Yeah,
he does.
He does.
He looks good.
He looks really good for it.
You look angry about that.
Look at the camera for that when I talk about people and their nice hair.
Plaid Coffee Roasters coming out next year. We're just right now. We're just listing all the stuff you do, so people know how busy you are.
Yeah,
tell us about that. What that's going to be. You got a bag of it right there.
Yeah, I got a couple bags right here. So, a friend of mine, good friends of mine, who own the bakery 222. And I have always talked about our own coffee. And I used to work with Goshen here in town. Love Goshen. Great people. I worked on their stuff for years. Well, when Jay sold it to his sister, they didn't really know me. They went another direction. Looks great, etc. But I missed coffee in my life so bad that I was like, I want to start my own. So Trevor and I went over to St. Louis to a contract roaster and started experimenting. And then as a result, started coming out with some really good roasts. And then for inspiration, we went to Scotland, and we trekked across Scotland, and every roast is named after a different stop in Scotland. So Pitlockery, Big Ed, Loch. I'm obsessed with the Loch Ness Monster. I believe that it is real, and no one can tell me Nessie is not real. And we have a Nessie and a Loch, and everything's inspired by our trek across Scotland, and we will go back and add more roasts and keep that up. So
fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You're never bored, are you?
No. And Trevor, who is an amazing baker, is developing an awesome menu for our cafe here in town. So
amazing.
It'll be great.
By the way, that's sorry, I don't mean.
No, go ahead.
Tanner.
Oh wow.
They know Trevor. You guys are from his hood.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I know him really well, and I just love to see that, people that we've crossed paths with are, in the same type of industries that, we're still pushing ourselves forward through, are still doing their thing. And it's just, you have an idea of what you think you're going to be doing at such a young age. And you're like, oh, I'm going to be doing this for sure. I don't care what else happens. And a lot of us, like him and us in music, really had that struggle. And I'm sure you can relate in so many things. But the fact that like we're all still involved in some sort of creative endeavor.
Absolutely.
And obviously that's why we're here, even talking about this stuff. But what a wonderful thing to hear and not even know of beforehand, because, man, we've all been through a lot of struggles like together and seeing each other go through. And so that's
real.
awesome to hear about. Yeah.
They went through a big transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're pulling it all back together. Have a new place opening up.
Where's that going to be?
So it's going to be 222 St. Louis Street. The city changed the address, so I don't have to redesign their T-shirts. And so it's great, but they're very creative too. One of the things I'd like to call out about them is their location is. Trevor went to the San Francisco Baking Institute, and it does just stunning work. His mom's super talented too. She makes Scotch eggs and all this delicious stuff we're gonna have. But the thing I love it is if you work there at their bakery, after like a year, they send you to San Francisco to learn something at the Baking Institute. So this is a local bakery who is taking their members of their team out to San Francisco to learn cool stuff where Trevor trained. I mean, that is really neat.
Well,
that is cool.
Small.
Man. That's really cool.
I don't know if a lot of people even know that about them. So you have these young people who are coming back and be like, well, my specialty is this specific French thing and things that are folded this many times. And it's just, I love foodie stuff like that in our town. I love that we have that,
That is cool.
Yeah.
And where's that going to be again?
That's going to be right around the corner from where it used to be downtown by the courthouse on 222.
Oh, it is?
St. Louis Street kind of curves around there. The old green building,
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, that's all I can say is it's green.
Okay.
So yeah.
And you're playing music. Again, I've seen that on the social media that you're beating the skins.
Yeah, I'm struggling to keep up with 3 real musicians. Is what I'm doing. So, Darren O'Brien, who was in the Unconscious, legendary band. I saw at the Mississippi Nights 50 times. Another legend, Donald Williams, who was in a band called Sinister Dane, who they played their first show opening up for mild punk rock band Snake Ranch back in the day. And after they played, I said, I don't want to go up there now because they were crazy.
Sinister Dane is local music royalty.
They are.
So is the Unconscious.
Yeah. And his later bands, Sugar Daddy just reunited and just played Del Mar Hall. And, Donald was in a lot of really great stuff. So, and then you've got Tim, the guitar player from Fragile Porcelain Mice, who, again, this is how old I am. His first band, Dimension of 13, played their first show opening up for Snake Ranch. And the reason why all these bands open up for my band is because we were the crappiest band in St. Louis who got the best shows. We got to play every decent show. We opened up for Henry Rollins and HR of Bad Brains and all these cool shows at Bernard's Pub and places like that. And so all these young people were seeing us, and they're like, "Can we open up?" And we're like, "We don't care. Sure, why not? We're terrible. Come play."
That's some crazy stuff,
Yeah.
man. Fragile Porcelain Mice.
Yeah, Tim,
You ever heard of them?
Mm-hmm. I've seen them.
So I had a roommate when I first moved to Edwardsville.
such a good guitar player.
He said, we got to go see this. I want you to come see this band. You've never seen a band like this. And I was like, I don't believe that. I'd seen the Chili Peppers and Fishbone and blah, blah, blah. And they kind of took a page out of all those books. And the Henry Rollins bit, they're up there wearing a dress.
Yeah,
That kind of stuff. But it was something else, man. It was one of the best live stage presence.
They were thunder.
Yeah.
And so you had this amazing band, crazy rhythms, like hypnotic rhythms and stuff. And then Scotty is not only a great singer, but he's the best dancer. Like, he was just the best dancer. Like he would be wearing like a full doctor's uniform for no reason, and he just had these moves. But he was such a psychotic, fun frontman. So.
Made you look.
Yeah,
that's what Sting would say. Why you dressed like a bumblebee?
Yeah.
Made you look.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's what you're up to. All that stuff.
Yeah.
Did we leave anything out that you're into right now today? That's pretty much it, right?
I think that's it.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, it's enough.
Okay.
It's enough right now.
That's who you are.
I don't need more stuff.
That's what you're doing.
I've had a couple people call me and be like, "Hey, we want you to be involved in this, or we want you to be on the board of that." And back in the day, I was on the board of the Science Center and a couple other things. And now people call me and I'm like, I don't have room for any more stuff. someday maybe, but right now I just need to focus on
because just Clementine's and just Harper's Bazaar would be enough for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's almost like you've got 5 jobs going on, 5 plates spinning at once.
Yeah.
And I can relate. Okay. Next, I thought we would go through and talk about your life and how you got to this point.
Sure.
Let's do it chronologically.
Okay.
And I want to hear how you manage all of it at all too. So I'm
Cool.
sure we'll cross that in the whole.
Yeah. We'll get to the fun part about my psychosis and screaming at the wall later. But
hey, at least I know I'm not alone.
No,
okay?
you're not. You're not. Yeah.
Kid from Granite City, curly red hair. That's when I first met you, about 1980. But grew up in Granite. Always lived in Granite as a kid.
I look like Simply Red. Grew up in Madison, down there by the steel mill. Immigrant grandparents from Croatia.
No kidding.
Yeah, Madison, Illinois. High school.
Did you live with your grandparents?
Yeah, 5 Croatians in a 3-room house. And then the crazy thing that happened in there was I lost my dad when I was 1, very young, car accident. My mom remarried 10 years later to this gentleman, another Jim. My dad's name was Jim. This guy was Jim. Raised me, wonderful man. And he basically came down and beat up the whole house next door, who was terrorizing our house, and moved us out of Granite. And I always tell that story. It's funny. I was like, yeah, just a normal Madison day. You know,
Is this Kirkpatrick Homes?
No. It was Greenwood Street, just right across the street from a meatpacking joint.
Gotcha.
And so the neighbors who used to fight with us and yell at us, blah, 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 all the time. I won't dwell on this story because this is a little negative, but
It's a good story.
but yeah, so the guy was like, "Hey, you parked a little close to my car," and my dad was just tired of their constant stuff, and he's like, "Why don't you go get everyone in that house and come out here and do something about it?" And a couple of them decided to came out, and they disappeared. They were on the ground. The cops came. They were laughing. They're like, "Good job. We hate these guys. They're always causing trouble." Like, they were like congratulating my dad for beating up the whole house. But anyway, it was a crazy story. So this is the mean Granite
And it was
story.
a different time.
Yeah, it was. It was a different time. Long story short, he moves us out of Granite. We get to our Granite house the first time. Our first night there.
You move out of Madison and you move to
We moved
Granite.
out of Madison. We moved to Granite. We're like, moving on up, heading to Granite City. What's up, people? And so we're in Granite City, and the neighbors get in a domestic dispute and gunshots just the first night. My dad's like, "I get you out of Madison," and we got gunshots the first night.
Where did you live in Granite?
At that time, Delmar, 2444, a couple blocks from the park, which
Couple blocks from the Christian Science Church.
That's right, that too, yeah. But we were real close to the Wilson Park and real close to the tennis courts, which made me develop a love for a sport that you and I met.
Yeah.
In. So in high school,
Very good.
yeah.
High school?
Yeah.
High school, you and Greg Kessler were the punk rock kids.
We were a couple of them, yeah, absolutely.
I remember being at a New Year's Eve party with you one time, maybe, and you guys were wearing leather jackets, and we got along.
Oh, yeah. I got along with everybody
You
pretty
did.
much, yeah. Now, I was made in high school. I don't know if you know that. So,
By Monty Kessler?
no, well, he was Greg's. That's why Greg didn't get messed with. He was one of the
Please.
toughest guys I've ever seen.
Yeah, let's not. I mean,
But
there's.
the other tough guy in the school is named Salvador Toro. He's a buddy of mine. We're still friends on Facebook. I got put with one of the toughest guys in school named Salvador Toro in home ec. So we had aprons on and we're baking cakes, being the toughest guy in school. So when I would walk around and someone would be like, "Hey, punk rocker, blah, blah, blah," he would just show up out of nowhere, and they would They would be like, "Never mind, we're sorry, sir, Mr. Toro." He was my bodyguard, and I could dress as big of an idiot as I wanted the rest of my life.
Who was the home ec teacher? There was a redheaded woman.
Oh man,
Is that who
I don't
you had?
remember? Yeah, she was great, man. We made some smoke.
We had. Yeah.
I loved that class.
That's
So my
where
dad made me take that because he was like, "You're going to mess your grade point average up. You're doing really well if you take another math class or whatever. Take home ec." And I'm like, "I don't want to take home ec." And I got in there and I'm like, "You have to bake cakes?
Yeah. I loved it.
This is brownies today?"
It was so fun.
Oh,
But
I love that class.
That's where like your love for all that started.
Is that when
huh?
you
I
became a
never even
foodie?
thought of that. Totally. Yes.
great.
That's when I became a foodie all of a sudden.
But that's also when you became a musician or a guy who fell in love with rock and roll and punk rock in particular.
Yeah.
You told me.
And that goes even further back because I took lessons at Fornajeski in Granite. John Fornajeski. And then his son, Stan Fornajeski, two of the best drummers in the country. We're in Granite City teaching people.
I
how
kind
to
of
play
remember
drums.
that.
Yeah.
Fornacheski's
Still see Satan all the time. Love that guy. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But you were going to see live bands. What turned on the punk rock light for you?
So what I found out is that music that intimidates me and scares me is the stuff I love the most. And what happened is Greg took me to a place in St. Louis called Turner's to see Black Flag. Didn't know who Black Flag was. I mean, I kind of did, knew their albums, loved Pettibon's album covers. And I went into that club, and I have never been more scared for a longer period of time in my entire life.
Because you were a smallish, redheaded,
Yeah.
15-year-old.
I look like I was in Simply Red. I look like Mick Hucknall.
Did anybody bug you? Did anybody?
Oh yeah, it was scary every time we went to these shows. It was like there were people. I mean, there was crowd surfing and moshing and pogoing and violence, and it was just you were in like survival mode to see music. Whenever I saw music, and then Bob and Liz and Jen and Jonna and all them from school, same Jay Huber, all that group, were all into really cool music and started taking me to see Husker Du and the Minutemen and all these other great bands at Mississippi Nights, a police officer wrote my ticket down wrong, so I had an over 21 fake ticket that was getting me into all the shows, so I didn't have to sit with the kids, so I got to sit with the adults and get into all these punk rock shows.
And the best venue it was, of course, Mississippi Nights.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
shows.
Now I played some of my crazy punk rock shows at the old Bernard's Pub in McCreetown, which is nice now, but back then that was the worst neighborhood in St. Louis. You paid kids $1 to watch your car, and that means if you don't give us the $1, we're going to mess your car up. And so you brought dollars or quarters, and you paid for protection for your car, and you would go in this place, and the air conditioning and heat never worked, and the lights would go out in the middle of the show. But I mean, you're seeing legendary punk bands from. We opened up for Social Distortion and all these great bands at that place. I got to meet all my idols then. So yeah, all Greg's fault.
Transition to SIU Edwardsville, where you're playing in bands more professionally now, so to speak. Talk about some of those experiences.
That's when we started playing a little more out of town shows. Gosh, our last two shows were opening up for All and the Jesus Lizard at Club 367. I mean, two legendary noise bands. Well, All was more of a punk rock band. They were the Descendants before that, but so Judge Nothing, the second to last show with All and them, and then Dazzling Killman, Darren Gray's band, and the Jesus Lizard at 367. And that's the most intimidated I've ever been by a band in my life. I just went and saw them reunite in Nashville 2 months ago, the Jesus Lizard. So if you've never heard them, they're the best noise rock band of all time.
I know some of their
Yeah.
Some of their music rings a bell. I remember that from my college radio days.
Yeah.
All those
sounds
bands.
sinister. It's like you hear it and you're just like, oh, I'm nervous about what I'm listening to here. It's just makes you uncomfortable in it. And live, it's even better. It's just they're amazing. You can tell jazz trained musicians playing noise.
So you are intimidated by the experience. It freaks you out, and yet you are gravitated toward it.
Can't stop. Cannot stop going.
Even now.
Back then, even now I still go. I wish I got out more. When you're a dad and you're busy,
Right.
It's harder. But I know there were nights, and this goes all up into my days when I was in bands like Bionica and Pave the Rocket. Pave the Rocket, we were doing festivals and touring with big bands and playing with all those Kansas City bands like Season of Risk and Shiner and all that. And you go into these places and you want to see music as much as you can because you keep hearing about new stuff. You can't believe, oh my gosh, these guys are great. You should hear these guys. And there's just this tumultuous cycle of people recommending great music and hearing music, and then they opened up for them. And I was going out 5-6 nights a week, and that's not easy to do, both financially and, sleep-wise, and going to college. So
And I think bands are more likely to tour now because that's how they get paid.
yeah,
They're not.
Sure.
People aren't buying their records.
yeah.
That's not how people aren't buying their CDs. The streaming service takes the money. So if they're not touring,
the vinyl's working, but you're not making money off. I mean,
No.
you're making a couple bucks off vinyl, but it's not like it used to be. Yeah.
So do you feel like there are more good bands touring now? Do you feel like the touring scene and the local music scene? Compare it now to when it was when you were in college.
Well, it's very different. Like the violence and the intimidation that we dealt with on a daily basis at these shows was different. It was very real and tangible, and you were a part of it. And when you got home, like, you were drenched in sweat and your clothes were torn, and it was physical. Now I go see bands from then reuniting that are probably my age. You know what I mean? But there are new bands playing all the time that I am not one of those guys who thinks music was better back in the day, because there are some terrifying good bands out now. Like, both, not just in the genres I'm talking about, but I mean, if you've ever heard, you're talking about visiting Charlie Warchow in San Francisco seeing jazz. There's a band from Minneapolis called the Bad Plus. I've seen them 14 times. They're a jazz band from Minneapolis. Dave King, the drummer, is the most amazing drummer I've ever seen. And when I buy tables to the jazz clubs they play, I buy the one right next to his drum kit, because he's just so good.
Does he recognize you?
Sort of. He's not as touchy-feely as a lot of other people I've gone to see, but...
Has the restraining order been lifted?
No, not yet. Yeah, that's why. He sees me longing and looking at him, wishing I was that good, and I practice more.
Oh, that kind of longing.
Yeah.
And then probably your most transformative experience professionally comes next, comes post-college, Zipatoni.
Zipatoni. I was working at the Riverfront Times for Ray Hartman back when it was independently owned, and Vintage Vinyl.
Was Chris King there then?
I don't think Chris was there.
He comes later?
I think he comes later, yeah.
Okay.
So I was working those two jobs, living in Granite, or actually probably moved to Edwardsville by then because I was going to school. And I both wanted to work both those jobs, so I was working in U City, putting a lot of miles on a 73 Mercury Comet. Terrible, ugly car I had. But I love both those jobs, and my friend Matt Reedy called me, and he was like, hey, I think you should come interview at this place. We can't hire fast enough right now. I'm working in this group called Photocelli. We're retouching stuff. We're making digital art, and I didn't know what to expect. So I go there for an interview, and I walk into this building where there's just young people everywhere, and there's a super nice kitchen, and there's a giant red tomato that's like 30 feet wide in the middle of the bar, and it says Zipatoni around it, and it's it was at their original location on Locust, which Boxing Clever, we were actually in that building later. It's freaky, come full circle, but I ended up owning a company in that same building. But so Zipatoni, I was the 75th, 76th person out of 350 people being hired at once for the Miller Brewing work. Mitch Myers and Jack Thorwegan were the two partners. They were throwing bodies at computers, and I wasn't even that good, but I showed enough promise to stick, so I interviewed there. I was hired 2 weeks later. Real sad about leaving the RFT, but I could tell something was going on here. And next thing you know, we're working on NASCAR events. We're flying up to Milwaukee, working on NBA stuff for Miller Genuine Draft for like 7 NBA markets, and we're pitching to the clients, and I'm wearing like a terry cloth headband and a Maverick suit, like basketball outfit, look like me, like to pitch the idea, because we were having a lot of fun. So, during the .com boom, you had a lot of budgets, you had a lot of access to a lot of stuff we were doing. So we did NASCAR, NBA, MLB, NFL. We did all those sales promotion programs for every market for all of their beers.
What did you study at SIUE?
Painting.
You were a painter.
Painting and printmaking. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just drawing. I knew nothing about any of this. I had a minor in graphic design because they put Macs in the art department. We were poking at them and learned how to do stuff with them.
That was probably new. Macs were like brand new.
Yeah, you were
out of
doing
the box.
You were doing graphic design with letterpress, letters, and stat cameras, and drawing and collaging stuff.
Okay.
So when the computer was invented, all of a sudden we're like, we could type something out, and we could do stuff. There were no layers in Photoshop yet. Everything was still a pain in the butt, but you had a way to do it. By the time I got to Zipatoni, computers were a little more advanced. We're in the Mac Performa era, still got big screens. And at Zipatoni, just to tell you how much stuff we were cranking out, I had 5 monitors. It was like I was on Wall Street. I had 5 monitors, and then I had an extra iMac for my email. So my iMac for my email, Then I had these big, tall processors. We had these giant servers, and we were just cranking out work for all this stuff. So I learned the design stuff at a Gateway Packaging in Granite City, designing food packaging. Then at the RFT, that's where I got my speed, right? Because at the RFT, we had to crank out a paper every week. So my first set of skills were I learned how to use a computer and the software, food packaging, high output, Riverfront time, speed. I got speed. So I was able, because you had to crank out the whole paper every week, you're just cranking stuff out. Then you get a couple days off, you come back, you crank it out again. Get to Zipatoni, you got an unbelievable amount of tools. They were buying, I was like, we need to buy a computer for videos. They're like, all right, how much? And I'm like, this. And then it would just show up the next day. They were just throwing money at problems, and we were learning how to use all these tools to make stuff. So
playground for creativity.
Yeah. I'll tell you a fun creative story about Zip. This is how old I am. They came up to me and they're like, music stuff, right? And I'm like, that's a weird question. I don't know I'm a drummer. What do you want? And they're like, we need a soundtrack for a CD-ROM for, who was the NASCAR guy? Wallace.
Rusty Wallace.
So Rusty Wallace was, there was a CD-ROM that came inside of a 12-pack of beer. And so I had to write the music, which I'm sure was great, to, I say facetiously, for a CD-ROM that was in a 12-pack of beer. So you got it and you put it in your computer. Oh, it was a mini CD-ROM. So if you put it in the wrong computer, it would explode and destroy your computer. You remember those?
What?
Oh, the mini CD-ROMs, remember those?
They sit in the tray.
Yeah, there's a smaller tray. If you put them in one without a smaller tray, it'll just explode and destroy your computer.
Okay.
They didn't really know that.
So what did the Rusty Wallace?
So you put it in your
CD
computer,
show.
and
Rusty driving.
It was videos, it was Rusty driving, it was pictures, photos. You could download stuff, and then you could enter a contest.
Heck yeah, he's a St. Louis guy.
Yeah. We probably had. Oh, he used to ride out Tri-City Speedway.
Sweet.
But he, this CD-ROM, we probably had a budget of hundreds of $1,000s to make the CD-ROM. It was going to be in every pack of beer for a NASCAR window for years.
So. I probably picked up a couple of those.
Yeah,
maybe. Probably have a stack of Rusty Wallace CD-ROMs back at the ranch.
I'd kill to find one. I don't have a CD-ROM myself.
It's like an adult Happy Meal right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would use a different word, but I'm not going to use it.
I like it.
I don't want to offend anybody. Okay, so then you transition over to motorsports.
Yeah.
Marketing. Because like when I look at you, I think Talladega.
Yeah.
You get up where that track is green. That's where the cars run the best.
That's right. So this was the craziest thing I did. I had my Zipatoni. I had 5 years under my belt there. Didn't really want to leave, but I had a friend whose dad worked there, and they kind of called me for an interview, and they're like, "We're going after."
What you said there, you mean for NASCAR?
Yeah. Well, no, it was Thunderbolt Marketing was the company. And they had an opportunity to pitch Pennzoil.
Okay.
So they're like, we don't want to just ask you to do it freelance because you're working for Zipatoni. Why don't you come work for us? And I was like, oh, and they're like, we'll give you this more money, much more money. And I was like, I'll be there tomorrow. Because at the time, you're a kid, right? You can't believe people are throwing money at you.
Was Zipatoni angry with you? Were they like, come on, Jim?
They weren't happy, but it was big and they had plenty of people.
And they understood.
And I wasn't the star of the show there. I was one of the, I did some innovative stuff, but I wasn't the star of the show. So, I went to this Thunderbolt place and I made a book with real nice foils and everything about their motorsports stuff because Jameson Braun, one of the partners there, he had done like the Star Wars commercials for their toys, and he worked with Muhammad Ali. Like, he's a legend in advertising. And this is a small company, so I got to work with him and this other guy, Tom Hattrick, another legend from I'm not going to remember the name of the company, big sales promotion company downtown. But anyway, another legend, worked on a lot of huge brands. And so I made this beautiful book, pitched Pennzoil, and we got work from him. So our second job that we pitched for him was they wanted to get into VR the first time when it wasn't that good. But remember when VR first got invented? Oh, yeah. They wanted
VR NASCAR.
Like, we want VR. So it was.
Were you working with the France family?
Or over our own Shell. We were in Houston.
Okay.
So I'm down in Houston at the headquarters for Shell.
Okay.
Shell owned Pennzoil, Quaker State. We had all those brands. We had all their small brands. Excuse me. So we concepted this VR thing, and to do it, we had to go to Jay Leno's garage where we shot Jay Leno hosting it. So Jay Leno was the host. He had like all of his car. We were in his airplane hangars of cars. We got to see his Stanley Steamer and all these cars and stuff. And then we got to go to Las Vegas Motor Speedway and get in I'm oversimplifying this. But we went to Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We got into a station wagon with an Omnimax camera strapped to the hood of the car, and we raced the team from Driven, the Tom Cruise movie, around Las Vegas Motor Speedway to film this virtual reality experience. And we had to do it like 10 times and burn all this fuel because you couldn't edit VR then. There was no editing, right? You had to do the whole race. So then we went to Craftsman Industries in St. Charles, Missouri, and they built this giant trailer with a bunch of seats in it with the goggles that came down. So you put these original VR headsets, which, like, if you went to the worst out of date arcade now, that's what it would look like. You know what I mean? Like, it was just
That's what it was then.
That's what it was then, right? But they built these seats in this thing, and we towed this so I got to go to Bristol, Talladega, all those races, Daytona, and this cart went with us, and people sat, and Jay Leno told them what motor oil was, and then they held on to a steering wheel and pretended to race. But it was so when they looked around, you could see all directions. It did work. Wow. The problem was the CPU units were so gigantic and fragile that every race they had to be repaired just from the bumps in the road. Because the hard drives were there was 9 hard drives to make VR work on the road.
Oh, my gosh.
And when they found out how much it was to repair, and they're like, that's nothing. That's cake. We'll send a guy every week. We don't care. This is killing it. Everyone's lining up to do this thing. So I had a hit on my hands, right? An early kind of a marketing hit because this thing was at every NASCAR race for 3 years, you know.
So you're going around to NASCAR races and making sure that it works?
Yeah.
Did you become a fan?
Of course. I mean, seeing these guys from Italy with stethoscopes listening to an engine, I mean, we were like, turn that, and you're like, how did you just do that? Like, it was mind blowing. And we got to go to NHRA, we got to go to NASCAR, we got to all the different things. So yeah, I was a huge fan while I was doing it. Because
who was cool to you? Which drivers?
Well, we were buddies with Steve Park, but we got to go to Dale's garage, and we got to meet them all.
Dale.
Yeah,
just gonna say it like that.
Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Number 3. Oh, yeah. Junior or senior?
Junior.
Oh, junior.
Yeah, Dale was already done.
Yeah.
But no, we got to shoot at those people. I was with a bunch of legends and learning from the right. I was very fortunate and lucky to be working with some legendary people in advertising. So
then you go back to Zip.
Work on a different team, different stuff, a lot of Energizer stuff, a lot of tech. And before I left Zip, one of the owners of Zip, Jack Thorwegan, went out during the day and came back, and he had bought an internet company, like the first internet company in St. Louis. Again, dating the hell out of myself. So stuff like that happened every day. And when I came back, the company was doing a lot more digital. It was, my 2 years off of doing kind of leading this creative group. I came back to a very different company. It was really cool.
Just in 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's part of the success of the company was that they were constantly able to reinvent themselves depending on the market, depending on what the needs were of the clients.
Yeah.
Drive agency?
Yeah. Then a headhunter didn't know I had just came back and called someone else, and they're like, hey, would you come talk to us? And of course I was like, obviously there's money involved. So yes, I will do this. So I went and interviewed with this gentleman, Dan Curran, and went to a new place and got my first taste of Anheuser-Busch. We worked on AB, we worked on Dickies, a lot of cool brands. We brought back an old soccer brand called Mitre. You remember Mitre?
Of course. Brought
Mitre back in England and got to do some cool fashion stuff there. So again, everything, there I learned a lot of different languages because I was really a booze and car guy at that point, which is not a bad thing to be, but I learned other stuff going there. So yeah.
So that's your bio.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you've done professionally. That kind of covers your professional resume in the creative space.
One more place, Boxing Clever.
Okay.
Where I worked with a lot of good friends from Zipatoni who I hired, but that was 12 years. And we had Brown Foreman as our main client out of Louisville, Kentucky, who owns, Woodford, SoCo. Got to go to Finland a bunch for Finlandia vodka and spend some time in Helsinki and that with
You're the CEO of Boxing Clever.
I was one
started
of the
it?
partners.
Okay.
There was 5 people involved. So,
But doing the same type of work with just
Yes.
different. And how would you describe that work overall?
Boxing Clever was amazing because we were, and this was the last 3 places. We started with 6 people, and I'm a 6 to 30 guy. I don't know how to get past 30, but I'm a 6 people to 30 guy. So I grew us from 6 people, my buddy Dave and I and a couple other partners, to 30 people working on Brown Foreman, Lambert Airport, Clementines, some cool small brands. And then I decided to take my line of credit that I had there, and that's when I started the crazy passion projects that you're seeing a lot of me now. So that's when I did the Archibald's Next Big Thing, the book with Tony Hale, who was on Arrested Development.
Let's hold that up.
Sure. I did these records. So I started a record label. We did everything from these cool 7 inches to full length. And gosh, we started doing, then all of a sudden, like Disney's hiring us to do music stuff, and we're doing posters for Tenacious D and, the in-store stuff at Vintage Vinyl, and meeting stars and getting backstage. And that was a very fun, that was the passion. That was like, I want to do more of that forever.
So you go from one company to another, and you're selling stuff. And I think that we talked off air, but beforehand, that I think that's kind of your genius, is that you're doing what you want to do, and you've monetized it. You're not going broke just doing stuff.
No.
That just because you want to do it.
Yeah, I feed it. I feed that machine, right? Like making the tangible stuff that I want to outlive me, and collaborating with artists is what I feed by doing other work. And I take it very seriously, though. It's not something I do just to do this. I take it very seriously,
And how is that usually like prioritized? Because I mean, of course, you've got to have the funds to be able to do your passion stuff. But between Ryan and I have gotten to the point that we have also, because of our passion stuff first, sometimes,
Sure.
taking the risk to sacrifice the time and effort it takes to put that out there. And then ultimately that ends up actually giving you an opportunity to further monetize yourself.
Absolutely. I tell a lot of young people a lot of young people who ask me, or when I speak, like I did a thing at SIUE last year to their marketing group and did a speech and stuff. And I tell people this: every job you do is an investment in something else. Every this is I don't know if you guys know who John Beck is, a local guy who makes lighting right here in Edwardsville. I've been to the W hotels in other cities where his lighting is. He lives here in Edwardsville. But I was fortunate enough to brand his stuff when I went out on my own, and this is just a little catalog of his work. But as a result, I was able to, I can take this to anybody and be like, yeah, we know how to make catalogs of the work. I've got like 10 of these, and it's like you're using these jobs you have as an investment to get something else that you want to do, or do it for someone else, It's all about investing your time, and there's also a how do I explain this? I think it's my buddy Chris Ryan, who I did the Tom Huck book with, explained it best. There's like 5 different fuel tanks of a job, and one of the tanks is money. If they're going to give you X amount of money to do something, you're going to do it because it's a good amount of money, and it makes a living, and it you can profit off of it or do a good job on it. The next one's how cool it is and how much what it gets you, what that tank gets you. The next tank is that tank going to keep getting refilled by that client, and you're going to develop a relationship with them and keep working with them for a long time. So all these different tanks have different meanings, and if you can get 2 of them full and 1 of them half full, you should take the job. You know what I mean? Like, but if none of them are full, like a lot of people come to you and be like, hey, you want a cool piece for your portfolio? I'm like, no, my portfolio is great. I don't need anything. I already have all that stuff. So, when people give me that, I'm like, that you need to go find someone younger who's trying to build that up. So you kind of have this ways to approach each job of what's it going to do for me, but also what's it going to do for them, and how do we all win?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a little formula that you're able to mentally look at. And I'm sure you probably organize yourself like writing down stuff, especially since you're so familiar with print and you kind of come from that age too.
Yes.
Which is like for us, we're kind of like right in the middle ground where the digital was kind of like prioritized over writing, but
Sure.
still you're like, oh, I'm gonna keep a notebook. But
Yeah.
you know, like speaking of formulas, it's like it reminds me of an interview I heard with Bryan Cranston. He actually has like an actual kind of like, I don't even know what it's called, but an actual like formula where it helps him decide whether or not he's going to take that project, because you know he can prioritize his
That's
mental
cool.
health
Yeah.
and you know what else goes into it as far as, you know, it being actual work, but also something that's going to, you know, feed him in return in so many ways.
Absolutely. By the way, I love you're talking about Cranston, Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I love, people don't realize how great Malcolm in the Middle was.
Fantastic.
Oh my gosh. I just started rewatching Malcolm in the Middle, and I'm like,
it's
God, how genius the show was. It was
great.
evil. It was
Yeah.
like,
they're reviving it, but they're only doing like 5 episodes.
yeah,
and they're all coming back.
I can't wait. I don't
So,
care. I'll watch whatever.
I know.
That's
I'm
great.
like, I'm down for that. I used
I'm
to
excited.
watch that all the time.
Yeah.
I love that show.
It's so
yeah.
great. Yeah.
This question is for all of you. Which projects are your favorites? Which ones are the ones that you enjoy the most? In general and specifically, which ones have been the ones, and what makes those your favorite projects as creators?
I can jump in and say I think the ones that I've enjoyed doing the most are the probably the I don't want to say pro bono because we've gotten paid for a couple of them, but the ones that the client is just like, do your thing. And even when we were younger, they're starting out, they're like, yeah, we trust you, just do whatever you want. And we had free reign to play around and experiment. And it was just a cool experience because you don't always get that, you know, rarely do you get that, we found. But in that regard, you know, because we backtrack a little bit. We like started out working together when I was at Webster doing film, and we were also in a band together, but then that transitioned to Mike continuing to do music solo, and then I would shoot the music videos for Mike, and that's kind of how we built our rapport over time and our workflow, our guerrilla workflow, just the two of us, one guy with a camera and then him out there, and then we'd make creative decisions on the fly. And that really kind of informed how we work quick and efficiently on projects, but we also get to kind of just try things out and see how they work. So when that kind of carried over a few times, more than a few, but when that carried over to a commercial project, when they're either writing you a check or not writing you a check, at that point, I don't even care, as long as they're like, you know, go for it, let's try it out. And then they're not nitpicking you afterwards. They're like, wow, this is really, you know, I really like this. I would have never thought about this. And it was just like, we got to do our thing. We did a chocolate ad, and we kind of just, you know, played around and tried different things. And then in the edit, I was kind of sitting there just piecing things together. And I knew the client, because she was actually a wedding client of ours, a bride that we shot. So I kind of knew her style. So I kept it in that realm, but also at the same time, like I kind of came up with a theme and went on with it. It was almost like a Stranger Things type feel. And
Fun.
she's like, I love this. Like, this is one of my favorite shows. I love this style. It works perfectly. It's not something you'd see normally for like a chocolate ad, or for a food ad, really, especially at that kind of macro level. But she was like, this is fantastic. And we just kind of, you know, it was just something that spilled out of our heads and we put it together. So I guess that's probably the most fun projects, the ones where there's no bureaucracy or people just saying like, you got to
Freedom.
do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the total freedom of just to be able to create stuff. And
Yeah.
it's rare, but it's fun. It's fun.
Well, and you're talking about all your favorite things converging together into one thing.
Oh, yeah.
which,
Yeah,
how does it not get better?
exactly.
It does not get better than that.
Do you ever work in film?
Yeah. I mean, I create content. It's funny. I like in film, some of the most fun stuff we did is at Box and Clever. We entered the 24-hour film contest and won our first year.
That's awesome.
Get the hell out of here. How'd we even do that? But so they showed our thing at the Tivoli in U City at the time, and they're like, and the winner is Imagine Slides, Box and Clever. We're like, what? Like, we made this movie in 24 hours. We were all about to die. We were so exhausted, and we won the thing. You know what I mean? Like, that was just one of those fun projects. As far as like working in film, like my buddies at Once, who I mentioned, we got to go to 4 cities to show rural innovation in rural America. So we got the budget to go through the America's Farmers Group to go film cool rural towns that have amazing business innovation. So one of my favorite videos that we did for that, it was in Willie Nelson's hometown of Abbott, Texas, and Chris and the crew went there to film, and they filmed this barbecue restaurant, population 300, by the way. And the guy goes, "We are the #1 restaurant in Abbott, Texas." They are the only restaurant in Abbott, Texas. And I just love little stuff like that. We went to Effingham, Illinois, and I found a barbershop, and I was like, I want to film in there. And so there's been run and gun stuff like that as well. But, I've created, content for a number of clients and stuff. And it's always, I love, it's such a fun medium. I'm not as good as you all are and, at it, but that's why when I do it, I hire professionals, and take a crew with me, but it's so much fun. So, yeah.
When a client comes to you and says, I want this, or I need some branding, or I need a film, what's your process? What's the first thing you do?
If they want branding, then I interview them till they're exhausted. And I try to get their whole company or the main shareholders into a room and ask them a lot of questions, do a very deep dive on discovery. This is a larger client, you know what I mean? If I'm with a smaller client, a lot more simple than that, but I still interview them till they're exhausted. I learned that from another mentor of mine, Martin Beal, who is a 3rd-generation ad man. He's here in St. Louis now, but worked in New York for a long time. He's a deep diving person, and he taught me how to do that. And so I find out everything I can about him, and then I try to go through and assign meaning to every part of the brand. So the colors have to mean something. The typography I use has to mean something. The logo, the design, the symbols, the secondary stuff. If people work with me, they know they don't get just a logo, that I don't do that, but they get a library of assets that they can use all over a bunch of different things.
Right, because you've done the work here.
Yeah, so
the
it's
front
like,
office.
So when I worked with Chad got 100, probably an 80-page, 100-page deck of concepts. How his stuff's going to look here, how it's going to look here, and I build 3D environments to bring it to life to people. So assign meaning to everything, create a statement that defines the business in such a succinct way that you can sell the business to anyone in a very short amount of time. And then a beautiful library of imagery and photography, and help build all that too. So
is this you sitting by yourself at a computer? You isolate yourself?
After that, yeah. After I interview them and get all that information, the next part, which is the part they all love, where I go back and I build this big deck of bringing their band to life. That's me. Or
you show up at 6
buddy
in the
Kevin.
morning, 8 in the morning, work till 5? Tell me about your
No,
schedule and where are you?
So because of my years of experience, I'm really fast at that. I don't like to tell people that, hey, I'm going to do this in 2 hours and you're going to pay me a bunch of money. It's not that fast, but there's a lot of speed to it. But it is me bouncing around, because the thing we haven't talked about is, you asked me how I do all this stuff, is the fact that I didn't know what ADHD was until later in my life, of how I like to put out fires, work on this, then go work on this. It's real hard to come back to this, but now I know how to do that mentally, to come back to it. So work on it in spurts over amount of time. I make people give me a month or 2 for the full process. In that amount of time, I'm working on their thing a couple hours a day. Now if I get on a roll, I've done it in straight week, but just depends. It's different every time. There's no exact formula, but I'm always thinking about it when I'm working on it.
You walk away from it every day?
Oh yeah.
Every day.
Every day.
You're not
walk
an
away
all
from it. Yeah.
You're not an all day, all night guy.
Write everything down. Like I said, I have full journals all over my house, all on bookshelves and everywhere. It's just full journals of thoughts and notes to make sure I don't forget anything.
How about you guys? Someone comes to you and says, we want to do a branding, we want to do a film, we want to do a brand film, we want to do an advertisement. I guess it depends on how much freedom, like you talked about earlier, but describe your process.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar, same kind of thing, discovery, dive into that. And I think one of the things that have changed, because we were so desperate for a long time, we were a smaller company and people weren't, people don't really know what video production costs.
Right.
B, they might know, but they get cold feet when you start asking all these questions. And I don't know what it is, but you dive in there. So you kind of have to play it by ear. So you can I've gotten pretty good at having conversations and prodding at the same time, but really just keeping them casual and getting the information.
I got to ask you a question.
Yeah.
So when you're having these interviews, to me, it matters a lot whether or not they have paid.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, have they paid? Have they signed on the dotted line?
Well,
because that's when you ask them the questions until they're annoyed. Because if you're asking them questions until they're annoyed, if they haven't paid you yet, they're liable to get rid of you at that point.
But I think that weeds out.
Yeah,
I think that weeds out the people you don't need to work with, and that's something that took a long time for me to kind of come to grips with. Like, if they can't sit there and answer questions, so I can give them the proper quote or the proper suggestion
and get to the appropriate end product for them.
Get to the pain points to why we're doing what we're doing, then it's probably not somebody that we want to work with anyway,
Or gauge that we'll work with them later on when they are actually ready.
Yeah, they're just not ready.
Prepared later.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that took a long time to get to that point, but yeah, there was a point where it's an easy way to weed clients out by asking the questions, and if they're like ghosting you, or if they're not, if this is a big deal, then they're not serious about getting into this because it's going to cost some money to make this, and I don't know, but it's
and that's the thing too, is like you were talking about, how fast you do things, but they're paying for the experience, and sometimes they don't understand that too, and so then when they hear the number, that also scares them away too. The people who aren't serious enough, it's like, well, I understand what you're asking for, and then there's like a bartering potential, depending on like what they actually have to offer in other ways, and we're open to that. Yeah.
The branding process is a lot different because you guys have a lot of process involved in stages.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff you have to do point A and point B before you get to C, D, and E. And people don't realize that either. Why sometimes the cost is what it is, but it is also like. You guys have the ability to save something because of your expertise while you're filming it or you're concepting it or whatever. And with motion, you have a lot of elements you can bring in. I know with what I'm doing with branding and developing a visual identity for people and the language, it's more isolative. You guys, your process is not isolative. You're there with them or what they're building or what they're making or what they're, you know what I mean? So you're doing a lot more hand-holding and a lot more a collaborative interaction with them.
Yeah.
It's what you do is very difficult, which is
and yours, like a logo or an imagery or whatever, like that's going to be their representation for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas this might be just a one-off project, a commercial. They might do 4 or 5 commercials.
Yeah. They may pull it down later.
Yeah, they might not even. We've done ads for people and they've not utilized them, or they posted them one time and that was it. And it's like a logo is going to be there. Like the colors have to be correct. It has to have the right angles. It has to be something that represents the company, and everybody has to be happy with it. So there's a lot more into that, I feel like, than there is a lot more pressure on that than there is just on creating this. But in that regard, we don't, as far as pre-production goes, like I'm not touching any of that until we see some kind of deposit in, because I've gotten into that before. We've gotten into the pre-production role and done storyboards and all this stuff, and then we don't ever hear back. And it's like, so that's why we make sure that they're serious by having that open call or open meeting and say like, okay, this is what we want to do. Do you agree with this on this page? Or is this number okay? And then once we get past that deposit, then, all bets are off and we're going to jump into the races. But
estimating is the worst thing about both of our jobs.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Because you are always guessing. You're trying to not sell yourself short, but also make it to where they want, they'll want to do it. And because I work with clients of all sizes, it's very difficult. The cannabis space, at the beginning, none of them, they didn't have any money yet.
Yeah.
And now they all have tons of money and they still want to argue about it. And I'm like, nah, you got money. I know how many people are smoking weed.
Yeah.
It's all legal now. Stop
yeah.
it. You know what I mean? Like there's just this, there's different industries, there's different costs, but it is a hard thing. And so I try to stick to the same formula over and over again. And that seems to work for the different sizes of clients that I have. So
Are you doing research once you do like get the client you want? Because
all I do is research.
Like,
I mean, it is just
are you like diving into their like old social media and then kind of learning their story?
Oh, I'm diving into the origins of the Latin language. I'm diving into the origins of the country they're from, or the origin of the word of what they do, or the history of the. I mean, there are. Booze, especially, you're creating a story, right? And in some cases, there are brilliant stories. In some cases, it's a brand new product. You have to make the story. You have to create the story. So, and that goes on a lot in my world. It's not just deep diving into their personal stuff, but finding out how deep you can go so that your brands and names, and because I name a lot of products too. A lot of people come to me with new products, so we position the product, name the product. And develop the branding for the product, packaging for the product, all that stuff. And you have to somehow figure out how to beat the competition a little bit.
Right. Yeah, because then you got to learn about, you're also not just learning about that customer and their product, but you have to learn about the whole industry as an entirety so you can figure out where.
Think about how many hundreds of years this has been, thousands of years this has been going on.
I mean, I'm not above buying bourbon because the label looks cool.
Of course.
Like, if I go and I see something that catches my eye, and I'm going to try it. I'm going to get it and try it. So.
You can pop this open if you want. My buddy Chris, who bought a barrel and did this. This is this is the same whiskey aged in the same barrel, 2 different lengths. And we developed this cool.
That's awesome.
Rip this off of here. This cool heat stamped story about the whole story.
Show
of
the
it,
camera.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
And it's like, and then if you get inside,
Say the name of it.
This is Storyteller and Curiosity are the two
Bourbons.
Yeah,
And they're in the store right now?
they're sold out completely. You can never get this again until he does another one.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, these sold out and went to clients and this is
My brother's going to be real jealous.
yeah, but the detail on the label, I can pass this around.
Show that to the camera.
Gold foil. It's
Oh yeah.
a lot of gold foil. These are 2/5.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And all of this stuff has to do with, everything from shutter speeds to, there's a jackalope it's in their office. It's like a lot of things on here.
Why 2? Why do you sell 2 of those in there?
He wanted the same whiskey. He wanted the same whiskey, same barrel at different ages. So they extracted and bottled half of the barrel and then aged it more.
So they're different.
So he wanted you to be like, sense the taste of the 2 barrels. But still 630. So yeah.
And your role in that was
Designer. Yeah, designer of the packaging and so I created all this.
what's
We
that?
did posters.
What did that retail at?
I don't remember because mine was free. No, I honestly don't remember, but yeah, that's a cool project. And I love projects that I like, I've worked on larger brands, but this is a very small, intimate thing. Like my mom collects whiskey, and when she found out about this, she's like, my friends are asking where they can get this. And I'm like, it is already sold out, ma'am.
Missouri Straight.
Yeah.
It's got, I see the jackalope on it.
Yeah. There's just, I love little details like that. I love, like you guys do as well. It's like how many details and nuances can I squeeze in the story, and so people can pick it up a year after they saw it the first time and see something different. That's fun stuff.
And you told me
It's like a hieroglyphs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's a cool way. Never thought of that. I love that.
you told me one of the things you love is the tactile response. People picking it up and looking at it and holding it in their hands like he's doing right now.
Right.
What is it about that intrigues you?
That will never go away. I mean, in a digital world, as much as we love everything we do, there is a need for human beings to interact and touch something, and I love it when I can make something that's intriguing enough for them to do that too.
The textures and the contours is what you're into.
Yeah. Tom Tom did the illustration for the cover of this book just for the book. This doesn't exist anywhere except on the book and a limited number of prints we pulled. So again, you've got a very well-known artist whose work is, is very, very worth what he puts into it because of the level of detail, and it only exists on the cover of our book. You know what I mean? I love stories like that. I love stuff like that. Another reason why I like vinyl and records so much, it's like my buddy Matt Reedy designed this one when I worked at Box and Clever. It looks like an old high school notebook for Super Fun Yeah Rocket Ship and Vanilla Beans, and it's just like, and this is what is that paper called? Soft touch paper. You can feel it. I love that. And when you get a record, you take it out and you look at it and you look at the sticker and then you put it on the turntable and the needle's got to touch it to even get the sound, and just the whole process is amazing. So
a little crackle and a little pop.
Yeah.
I play records.
Yeah.
What's your dream jobs, guys? Tell me your dream job scenario.
Probably pretty close to what we're doing now. I think if like in a perfect world, I would be like the musician up on stage and I'd have my whole crew, and Ryan would still be the video guy, or we'd be doing all sorts of vlogs on the trips and stuff like that, especially if I was to say, my dream from my youngest years, as far as
what about now?
Looking into adulthood. But now, I mean, yeah, it's perfect because I grew up in a home that was, very focused on the importance of family. And so, as I knew I had these dreams, like I also knew that I wanted to, find, the person I wanted to raise a family with and start raising that family, and not wait, because I didn't want to be a dad at like, my kids are turning 18 and I'm like 70 years old, and it's just like, no, like, I want to be able to play with them and enjoy every aspect of it. And I remember the meetings that we had from the get-go of our, company starting up, and that was a huge motivation for me, because my father, he owned his own business for the longest time, and just to be able to kind of make the decisions you want to be able to spend the time with the people you love the most, but, have the people to work with in order to get the things done, and keep a working ship in terms of your business. And I think we're still learning a lot and how to balance all that out. But I think the main thing still stands all the time is that, like, we understand what each other's priorities are outside of our career aspirations, but we also understand how important it is for us to, continue rising and doing what we're doing with our business.
Dream job there?
Author. Wish I was writing books. Wish I started writing at a much younger age as a novelist or author. I mean, I read authors like David Sedaris now, and I'm a huge Tom Robbins, Christopher Moore, crazy whacked out fiction.
What's your favorite Tom Robbins?
Tom Robbins book? Still Life with Woodpecker. Yeah, but I do have a tattoo of Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates on my arm too. He's a redheaded author too. He's a ginger, so I relate. But
I've read them all.
Oh, he's genius. I'm so happy to hear that.
How Do You Make Love Stay?
Oh, my gosh. Brilliant. Yeah.
The Marlboro pack and all that.
The Camel cigarette pack.
I agree.
Love it. Yeah.
Still Life.
Yeah. Do you read Christopher Moore?
I don't know Christopher Moore.
Okay, if you like Tom Robbins, just go get A Dirty Job by Christopher Moore right now. Everyone I recommend to loves it. I've got a tattoo of that too. But
yeah, Fierce Invalids is a good one.
Oh, Fierce Invalids is so hilarious.
It's quite funny.
Yeah,
and
oh my gosh, Jitterbug Perfume.
Yeah.
Jitterbug Perfume is like, I've read that book probably 30 times. I just can't stop reading it. It's brilliant. Cowgirl's amazing. It's the only book of his that
Sissy Hankshaw
that they could have tried to make a movie and it still didn't work because his books are too weird. You can't make movies out of those books.
Yeah, but it's got Uma Thurman in it, and that makes it delicious.
It does. Yeah, she's fantastic.
Did schools do a good job of training you guys? Because I'm interested in that as a school teacher, as an English teacher. Did schools do a good job of prepping you guys to be creators, filmmakers?
I think the individuals.
You want to think about it, Ryan? Ryan's like, no.
I think certain individuals in the schools, like, and that's, you're an example of that, obviously. But for me, for sure, there was just a specific number of people that were like really proponents of me like continuing to be creative. And also the same type of people who were also like helping to push me to kind of find my place in the system and, you know, learn how to work the system and not fight it so much.
What you?
I think I got super lucky early on. Mrs. Weiss, you remember Mrs. Weiss, my high school art teacher?
I do.
Granite? Okay. Mrs. Weiss liked me enough to send me to WashU as a senior or a junior and a senior to prep for college, and ended up getting me a scholarship. So that's just someone who I owe a great deal to, because they did something for me early on that turned me on.
So you knew early that art was going to be your thing.
I was going to be creative, yeah.
When did you know?
When I couldn't slam dunk a basketball.
Well, a lot of people can't slam dunk. I can't slam dunk a basketball.
I know, I'm kidding. I'm joking, but I was already doing art early and often, and my mom, drawing, painting, sculpture. My mom took me to the art museum. She took me to art classes. She knew.
She cultivated that in you.
She sent me to different, I tried piano, I tried guitar, I tried everything, and then I ended up on drums, because she kept saying, try this. She was very encouraging. So she did it. It's her fault.
And Ryan, you've told me multiple times that you always knew that film was going to be a thing for you. Mm-hmm. You've always loved the creative process and filmmaking, but you answered immediately that no, school was. You feel like school even went out of its way to stifle that?
I wouldn't say that. I never had the experience of having a teacher that saw that in me, and I'm now, granted, I was a very quiet, subdued child. I didn't talk in class all that much, but school was very easy for me. I aced everything. I didn't try. And that might have been part of it too. If I was challenged more, maybe that could have helped. Problem is, a lot of the teachers that I had were 1 foot out the door, 1 foot in the coffin, and I don't think they most of them didn't care to engage in that regard. Some probably didn't know how, because they were such old school voices. They just didn't really see the creative aspect, and I just did never have that one person that. Unfortunately, honestly, I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't think there was a single individual that I had in any class that pushed me. Even the classes like the honors English, where we did the films that we had talked about the last time, they just, here's your grade, thanks a lot. It was almost a hassle of us doing that instead of writing a paper. So
probably because you were doing so well that they were like, well, I don't have to worry about him at all. And
but you're referencing the curriculum and the methods. You're saying that they didn't give you a lot of opportunities, and when they did, they weren't that.
Well, partially that, but also just that I didn't ever have that person saying, recognizing the creative aspect that I provided or that I might have been good at, and then they didn't foster that creativity.
They didn't value it.
Yeah,
I think there's a couple of reasons. I feel like schools in general, we have meetings and we don't emphasize, here's how we're going to get kids to be more creative. It's hard, because I think part of it is because it's hard to test it. It's hard to evaluate it for some people. Yeah. And that's why when kids write poems in my class, they self-grade. Self-grade.
Interesting.
You have to do 3 drafts.
Yeah.
I don't need to see them. If you did them, give yourself a 5. You got to use 5 different devices. And you have to identify them.
Yeah. Use
some imagery, some assonance, some consonants. Use the tools in the toolbox.
That's cool.
And is it your best poem of the year? Grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 3, and I'll give yourself a 3 if it's your best poem of the year. If it's really close, give yourself a 2.99. If it's not, give yourself a 2. Don't be too hard on yourself. But I think self-evaluation is part of it. And another reason why I don't think it's emphasized is it's not graded, it's not evaluated on the ACT.
Yeah, it's hard to quantify it.
So why do schools care? Because that's not what's going to get you into Stanford. Now, if you're a great opera singer, or maybe you're a great saxophone player in the band and you've got that, then Stanford might be interested.
Yeah.
But they want you to be able to do well in that ACT. And I don't ignore that fact. We do a whole unit on how to beat that test, how to win that game, because it's a game. But I think as teachers, we need to find that balance. of inspiring
Yeah.
and providing the space for creativity in our discussions and in our lesson plans without ignoring that, that education that's going to lead to success on the ACT and in academia. And if you guys would have been the engineering types, we have to provide the necessary training for you as well. But I think we don't have the conversation enough of what are you doing to provide kids the space to be creative.
And I don't want to put a blanket.
And I don't.
This
either.
is just my experience, because I know that Mike had some great teachers that pushed him. I know my sister and a lot of people that I know did have those same, went to the same schools, had teachers that definitely at least encouraged them to push forward through this creative aspect. I just, with the luck of the draw, I just didn't get them. So,
and it's easier in some classes than others. It's easier, obviously, if you're in art class.
Yeah.
But I think in education, sometimes some of us miss opportunities to create space for creativity in classes like PE or whatever. I'm not picking on PE teachers.
It's hard to be a teacher anyway. Like, it's hard to figure. You've got to. This is a whole nother way you got to look at stuff.
Yeah.
And frankly, you've got however many kids in a class, and especially when they're and this is a lot on me, because like I said, I was extremely withdrawn. I just kind of went about my business. I didn't really answer questions out loud. I didn't do those things. I was just a shy kid.
You were a good guy for being friends with him.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Pretty
yeah,
much true.
we probably just felt
it.
bad for each other, and it ended up working out. But
alcohol's a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, one of the things I was gonna say is how important was being in a high school band for you guys? Because I've never had that experience. But you look at these high school bands, and I was never the kid in the band. And you think,
wish I did. Yeah.
I mean, it was.
You were
no, not a high school band. I was in a a band playing with friends, but I was not in the official band.
No, but that's what I mean.
Yeah.
How
Garage
important
band.
was? How
Yeah.
often was? How important was? Like it seems to me like you learn a lot of skills through that experience.
Well, I want to say that. So I taught twice. I taught at University of Wisconsin online, doing a friend a favor, and I taught here at SIU in person, the design department. The one thing that I wish someone would have taught me are exercises in patience, because there's specific art that I can do now as an adult, but I didn't have the patience to do when I was young, and it makes me angry.
How do you teach that to a kid?
I try a couple different ways. But with design students, for example, I will make them create a mind-numbing, detailed pattern of a specific size. And you can tell whether it's good or not. Yes. And then there are key command calisthenics to make them do repetitious things with their software, because the software is super important in design, right?
It's everything, right?
All of my students were like, I wish more teachers taught us software like you. I'm like, well, I'm not telling them how to teach, but you have to have patience with the software, and you have to make it do certain things for you, and you have to you have to have enjoy repetition and patience and focus. And how do you teach those things? There are little ways you do. And another podcast I got interviewed for recently, Martin Beal asked me, how do we that same question, and I didn't realize a couple of things that I did where I was actually trying to do that, and now I remember. It's like there are just little subtle ways you can teach those things, but then don't explain to them until after what you've done. You're like, you filled out that entire space. How long did it take you? And they're like 20 minutes. And you're like, see, it doesn't have to be 6 hours. Patience can come in small doses and small things. Cause every creative has a little ADHD in them, right? I mean, creativity does not come from people who have no issues with, multitasking and inspiration and stuff like that.
One of the things that you have done, and one of the things that you guys do, and one of the things that I think kids really need to learn is risk taking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Take a risk, take a chance, take an appropriate risk where, I'm not saying try to jump your motorcycle over the fountain. I'm saying be willing to say what you think is going on in this poem.
Mm-hmm.
Have the courage to do that. Have the courage to start a film company, to start coffee, to start your coffee deal. That takes courage. How did you learn that?
Yeah. Coffee?
I mean, not the coffee, but just
risk?
The courage.
Because being broke is so easy. I've done it so many times. I'm a grown man now. I do okay, but let me tell you, losing money don't care. You know, I'm used to being both. Yeah. I'm used to both being a guy who has a couple of bucks and a broke person living in Madison. They're both super easy.
And it's probably, I mean, for me in those situations, that's the most motivating too, you know, because it's like, I don't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to put it all out there. And then of course the ingenuity and innovation, you know, that it takes in order to
totally
be like, okay, I don't have a lot to work with here, but here I am.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go for it. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to use what I got. And for me, like thinking back, I'm like, man, that was some of the simplest type of risks I took. Now it's like, okay, now I've got stuff, you know, I got a family to worry about. So it's like, all right, what's worth it? But
to get up on a stage and play your guitar it takes so much courage.
Yeah. And that type, you know, I got to say this too, because, you know, I had a really, he was my best friend. I considered him my brother, and my brother was best friends with him. He was, a brother that my younger sister looked up to. His name was Mikey Lee Lively, and he passed away in by a car accident. He had stayed the night at my house, and we had this huge powwow. All my friends and my brother's friends, we all hung out. They all stayed the night, and then the next morning, me and a couple of my buddies went to a skate park. A couple of them, it was summertime. They went and did their thing. And he went to take his four-wheeler with another friend who just got his license to drive across the river, and they were leaving Bethalto and didn't even make it out of the city, and they got in a car accident. He passed. But, you know, that was something I had to face early on. But, you know, when he passed, like I all these certain things really stuck out to me, like why he meant to me, like what he meant. And, you know, one of the things that still stuck with me today that I think about all the time is, one of the nights I stayed the night at his house, we were just hanging out doing a lot of things, you know, just like playing video games or, you know, playing basketball or soccer. And then, you know, then the night's coming, but we're all still hyped. And he's got a younger brother who's kind of like at the age where he's like annoying to us, but still wants to hang out with us. And Mikey starts getting out his notepad, and he starts writing lyrics on this little yellow notepad. And he's like, yo, check this out. Like, and then, you know, I stopped playing the game, and I'm just like, oh, that's awesome. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to write some down too. So we start writing all these lyrics down, and we're just like rapping them back and forth to each other. 'Cause we listened to like, you know, St. Lunatics and Big Timers. And he was someone who also introduced me to a whole bunch of rap music at the time. And, you know, that was over the weekend, and a couple days go by, and we come back to class, and it's, Mrs. Rice's English class. And she's like, hey, you know, anyone want to share anything that they did over the weekend? And
I say that every week, every Monday.
So he gets up, and, you know, he's like this really jockey, like popular, very athletic dude, but like also like everyone loves him. He's not like a mean jockey dude. He's just like this. He's just good at everything he does, but he's so interested in everything else. He's not really interested in class. So he like doesn't really participate like that. And then all of a sudden he stood up in front of class, and he was just like prefacing what happened and giving them context. Like me and Mike were, you know, writing these lyrics, and I was like immediately embarrassed. Like I felt I was just like, dude, don't say that, you know? But he took that risk, and he started, and he put out his rhymes out there, and I was just like, whoa. I was like, he just did that, man. That was the last thing I expected him to do. And it's stuck with me ever since, you know, the whole process. And that right there was like one of the most ultimate risks, you know, to take, especially at that age, because we were in middle school. I think we were in 7th grade at that time. And yeah, it was just 7th or 8th grade. But, you know, everyone judges you, especially at that age, you know, everyone's the most self-conscious and secure of themselves. And then he's just, that's why, you know, that's just one of the many things that I remember him doing, that I'm just like, that guy took risks. And that's the type of thing I try to remember anytime I'm like, okay, what's this worth? You know, is this something that I really want to do?
It's a lot easier as an
adult.
boom,
I'm going to do it.
It's a lot easier.
I want to talk about risk though too, because I think there is a disgusting thing about our society and our culture, is that we, when I was playing music in Pave the Rocket, I was working at Zipatoni, and the pressure for people to make me want to quit the band and go to work, you know, not just parents, relatives, friends, there's this pressure to do the safe thing.
Yep.
And the payoff at writing the big song or the big book or the big painting is so much greater than making a living, you know? And so it's like, while I'm alive, I'm never going to put my child in that position to be like, you need to make sure you've got a backup, as whether it's an accountant or whatever. I could care less. I want her to do the most risky, scary thing she could possibly do while I can support her, because I hate that society is like, you need to do the safe thing. You know, you need to do the safe
What if she doesn't make any money, though, and lives in your basement forever?
If, as long as I'm alive, she can do that. But I know she's not going to. I know I'm not going to guide her like that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to guide her to fail. I'm going to put as much work into it so she doesn't. But, I mean, gosh, I
follow your passions.
Yeah, the risk, like I said, the risk of the art and culture, which our society and a lot of times demonizes. Ask Tom here. Tom's done nothing but do artwork. He taught at WashU for a while and stuff like that, but done artwork his entire career. I love that. I mean, he hasn't had to answer to anyone, you know. So I wish more people took that risk.
He never sold out.
No.
Did you?
Hell yeah. And no. So both. I mean, I have got to do. Okay. First of all, I didn't mean
to point the.
No,
I pointed the Charles Dickens finger at you.
I love that you asked that, and I think it's great. I think the thing is this: I have definitely made money off things I've done, and I'm gonna make more money. But I've also got to do a lot of things I've really wanted to do as a result of it. Because we all have to pay the bills, but I wouldn't change a lot, except, like I said, I really wanted to write that book, and now I'm trying now, and I still can. It's not too late. But
what is it about writing a book that titillates you?
The finality, it's there's this. First of all, when you finish a book, you miss them. You miss the people in it. You miss the characters. You want to see them again, or they affected you, or they scared you, or whatever. But the effect that it has on you after that last page.
You like to be scared.
And the good, I do. I love to be terrified. And I think that maybe that's the risk, right? Maybe it's because I love to be scared that I want to continue to take risks, because I feel like if I'm not doing it right, maybe. So
advice for people in the creative space from the three creators at this table.
I mean, I think if I could tell myself something, it would just be persevere. I mean, really, that's the biggest thing, in my opinion, is you're going to deal with a lot of shit, and you just got to get through it, whether you like it or not. If this is what you want to do, keep going. That's all we've done. We've dealt with, I mean, people are we see people from high school or whatever, and they're like, man, I can't believe you guys are so successful. Well, you don't see a lot of what happens, you don't see the shit we wade through, unfortunately, and the stuff that we've had to deal with over time. And really, it's just our own stubbornness that we refuse to do anything else that has gotten us through those low points. So I do think that's my main, my main advice, or whatever you want to say, is that you just keep going. If this is truly something you want to hang on to and continue to do as a whatever it might be, as your passion, as your career, just don't give up. Just keep going.
Yeah, I would say believe in what you know, and what you know to do, and what you know not to do, and then also just trust, be able to figure out who you can trust, and just let yourself trust them to do their part, and do what they're good at.
Yeah, trusting the other people, with you guys.
Yeah, and if they fail, it's not okay, just try it again, and because that's not it. Then if you failed, that just means that you figured out what you can make better next time. So just do it, then go do it again.
Advice for a young marketer,
designer, creative.
Yeah.
My big advice is you have to do great work. You can't do okay work. You're going to do okay work for a long time. I did subpar okay work for over a decade before I think I did anything good enough to where I could then go in and be like, okay, now this is what I charge and this is how long it's going to take. But you need to find people who are better than you to help judge and help work with. You have to have mentors. And then you have to put yourself out there. My other big advice is be relentless as far as telling people what you do. Everyone knows what I do because I have a big mouth, and no matter where I am or where I'm getting coffee or where I'm eating, they're going to know before I leave that I have coffee to sell them, that I can design stuff. I just tell them. And that's why I keep getting to work, because there's not anyone who comes in contact with me who doesn't know what I do. Got to sell a little bit.
I suspect that there are some really great designers who can't sell.
Oh, I agree.
To me, you have that gift. You have both those gifts. Yeah. You've got the artistic side, but you also can go pitch to the client articulately and enthusiastically. You're not just the guy that stares at the screen.
No,
I think that's really critical.
Yeah, every agency needs one, or two. I mean, I've worked with some great account people. Boxing Clever was owned by myself, and Dave Scott was the main partner who brought me on. And I went to college. Dave was an SIUE graphic designer. I introduced him to his wife, Renee. Very good friends of mine. Dave was the guy wearing the nice shirt who they believed in, who they knew they would get their work. I was the guy who was going to make their crazy ass shit for them. You know what I mean?
You're the idea man.
Yeah.
Feed the mayonnaise to the tuna.
Yes.
That little night shift reference.
Yeah, absolutely. And so an agency always is good to have, like good cop, bad cop, or you could call it straight guy, weirdo. Like those two people work well together. So,
anything here we didn't talk about?
No, I just brought it because I like to pass it around. These books, it's just beautiful to collaborate with people. You know from your teaching background, this is a young lady named Sarah Bland who's a teacher who made this beautiful planner for
teacher organizer.
Organizer that's very zen and focused in self-care and empowerment, and it's just one of those projects. Again, I got to work. I just am so honored that these people work with me on projects like this that now teachers get to use every day. That makes me feel good about what I do.
I could think of one last question. Mm-hmm. You talked about naming things and coming up with names for things. Mm-hmm. What's your best name? What's the name that you're proudest of?
I'm going to say this one just because from a financial standpoint, it got the biggest offers. So Mitch Myers, my client now, who is one of the managing partners of Suede, she and I went to San Francisco to do focus groups behind glass about weed when it was becoming legal. So we flew to San Francisco, rented this, we were in this high rise. We rented this room. We were the people behind the glass they couldn't see. We brought people in to talk about weed, about cannabis. There were, one table was all lawyers who liked weed. Another table was all younger people. And so we get to go do focus groups on weed. And we developed this brand for California at the time. While we were in there working on the consultancy we were there for, and I came up with one of the first names for a cannabis product called MiDose, MIDOSE. And the problem was people could not figure out how much to take. That's always the scary thing for new people who, I'm like, new people? You mean new people? How long have you not been smoking
You're
weed?
not from Granite City.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I came up with the name MiDose, MIDOSE, and when we put it out there, now a group in California owned that brand, and it's here in Missouri. You can get it here. But another big group of people opening dispensaries and stuff tried to buy that name, and the offer got up to $150,000, and they didn't take it. I wouldn't have gotten any of that because I was paid for that coming up with that name anyway. But I thought that was kind of cool. That's a cool story for me that I was like, it didn't feel that hard, but at the same time, this product was a vape, so it was dosable. It was in a mint, so it was dosable. So you could take one and know how many milligrams you're getting early on in the situation. So that's my
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's pretty easy to come up with names for marijuana.
Yeah. It's not hard.
I think it
will work.
Yes.
Yeah. But,
I would think some of the ice cream names, some of those ice cream names when I go to Clementine's
yeah.
those
are like self-explanatory though.
They're so good. Though.
Yeah. You have you look at food trends, and then you look at what's popular, and you look at what the chef said they can get, and then there's all these things that come together, in a culmination of, okay, this is called this, and sometimes it's just the name of two of the major ingredients, Yeah. But we did have one last year that had Pop Rocks in it, organic Pop Rocks called Fairy Floss, and it was pink with Pop Rocks and sorbet, and it was for the Missouri History Museum. We did a thing with the Missouri History Museum last year. And my gosh, it was delicious. And I was, Fairy Floss, please.
That's a good one.
You don't get a lot of 56-year-olds walking up asking for Fairy Floss.
I wasn't implying that everybody from Granite City smokes weed. But,
no.
we were kids in the 70s and 80s, and if you've ever seen that 70s show, that's a pretty fair.
We knew where to get stuff.
I love our hometown.
Me too.
I love it.
Love it too. I still go all the time. I mean, I still hang out with my friends from grade school.
Absolutely.
You guys are a men of culture.
That's right.
Of course
exactly.
we are. Of course we are. Guys, anything else? Any other questions for Jim or anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
I mean, probably lots, but thank you for taking your time
it's an honor.
out of your
Thank
busy
you.
schedule.
Yeah, man, appreciate it.
Sharing, just your insights on your process and the experience. And, I think no matter what industry you're in, you kind of run across these problems when you're trying to do your own thing and build companies and collaborate with other people. But, that's why we're here, and hopefully people, get to hear this and learn from it. But we're going to hopefully get you back on here eventually and kind of see what goes on in the meantime.
Yeah. I will say I came a long way to be here tonight. It took me over 4.5 minutes to get to the studio.
Well,
so
this
was an honor and super easy. Thank you.
Eventually we will have guests who will call in remotely.
Yeah.
And our reach will be national, if not worldwide.
Yeah, international.
But what is fun is how many amazing creative people with amazing stories there are right here in our backyard.
Oh my gosh.
And I think that's it's. I want to exploit those stories first, and just hearing you here today is cool, man. I think the scope and the variety of the things that you've done is inspiring, and also the fact that you've made it work fiscally is really cool. Yeah. So I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you're a perfect example of like what we're trying to do with this podcast is you encapsulate all that as far as
thank you.
Creativity and the
You
business
too.
aspect. And so, it was great having you on, man.
A lot of
Thank
love
you.
in
I
this
hope we
room
can-
right now.
I'm telling you, I hope we can all work together somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Be fantastic.
You had mentioned that. I mentioned John Beck, the lighting guy here.
Yeah.
When I was on that trip to San Francisco, I went to get coffee that morning, and his lighting was in the coffee shop. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I can't escape. But it's, again, Edwardsville is a hotbed of creativity, and I think the university and all, has been a kind of a nucleus, and our downtown here of kind of being our cultural epicenter. I love it here. That's why I didn't leave when I moved here for school.
All right, bro. Thanks so
you.
much for coming by. Good to
Thank
see
you
you.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to the Creatures of Creativity presented by Whole Street Productions. And big thanks, Jim Harper, for Dave Lipe, Ryan Tollison, Michael Segura, Jim Harper. Thanks so much for listening. Creatures of Creativity. Creatures of Creativity.